A very good morning and warm welcome to all of you for today's webinar on rational use of remdesivir and oxygen therapy. I welcome all of you. I welcome our Honorable Vice Chancellor and the Chairman of the Task Force, Dr. M.K. Sudarshan sir, and also all dignitaries for this function, for this workshop. Over to Dr. VC sir. VC sir. Hello.
Kirti, if you are there, put
Hello?
Vice Chancellor online.
So VC sir.
Honorable Vice Chancellor for opening remarks.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Good morning,
I take this opportunity to, on behalf of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences and my whole entire team here, to welcome all of you for this online training program, CME program, particularly with subject to COVID-19 disease. As you all are aware, that second wave has set in Karnataka, and not only in Karnataka but throughout India, and we are all in facing a lot of issues in tackling this pandemic. Keeping that in mind, we know that exactly at the same time in 2020, last year, around 30th of March, we started the first training program when the first wave was identified. So exactly a year later, we are in the same situation, but now we are in the second wave. There are a lot of differences between what happened then and what is our preparation now and how we are equipped to face the second wave. These issues are different. And there are a lot of other new issues that have set in the second wave. So keeping that in mind, we need to update ourselves, we need to educate ourselves and be well prepared or better prepared to tackle the second wave. Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, during the first wave, conducted a lot of training programs, not only for doctors, specialists, almost all specializations, then even for healthcare workers, and also for public, police, everybody. So we took up on that onerous task of educating and passing on authentic information. In the same pursuit, this time also in the second wave period, we are looking at educating people, giving them authentic information from the experts in the field involved in this thing. I am very happy to note that the response has been very good. As far as the information it has to disseminate to each and everybody, the more people know about this, the better. So keeping that in mind, today we have organized a program and the speaker is Dr. Shashi Bhushan. He will be talking to us about rational use of oxygen and remdesivir. So I welcome all of you for this CME program. I also recognize the presence of many professors, principals, heads of the departments, and also many doctors, healthcare workers who are attending this program. My sincere welcome to all of you. The program is like this. When Dr. Shashi Bhushan would give a lecture on the rational use of oxygen and remdesivir and all the myths and other things that is attached to this. And after his talk, there will be a question and answer session. You could raise your question through the chat box or directly by asking questions. As many as questions can be answered now or others will be sent to you later on. So with this in mind, I hand over the mic back to Dr. Mahendra and Dr. Dayanand to
yes, sir.
this.
Thank you.
Such programs will be organized every week on Tuesdays and Fridays. And the whole program will be on our website and we will also intimate individually everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope we learn a lot from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And now I welcome Dr. M.K. Sudarshan, sir, to give his remarks.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. S. Sachidanand, the speaker of this session, Dr. Shashi Bhushan, the program coordinators, Dr. B.J. Mahendra, Dr. Dayanand, and Dr. Rupashri, and all the participants who are on this Zoom link. This talk is very timely as we see there is a lot of hue and cry in the public domain about both remdesivir that is being hoarded and black marketed is widely in the news, and the use of oxygen that also has come into a lot of criticism, and there is a great demand for oxygen. And today, if you see in the TV channels, there is a lot of bad news, not a
ಕಾಕರ
good news
ಇದೊಂದು ಹಾಫ್ ಅನ್ ಅವರ್ ಮೀಟಿಂಗ್ ನೋಡ್ತಾನೆ ಜೂಮ್ ಒಳಗೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೀನಿ
about
ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾನೆ
the oxygen.
ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಪಾಠ ಇಲ್ಲ ಕೂತಾರ ಅವನು ಬರ್ತಾನೆ.
So I think without wasting our time, I request Dr. Dayanand Vijay Mahendra to carry forward this program. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now, I request the Dr. Shashibhushan. Hello?
Yes, sir.
I request Dr. Shashibhushan.
Dr. Shashibhushan, kindly start your,
Yeah. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly, Dr. Shashibhushan, without any echoing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Sachidanand, sir, Dr. Mahendra and Dr. Dayanand for giving this opportunity. This has been continuously, webinars have been continuously ongoing since last 1 year. So the message to control or stop pandemic is a issue here. Today I will be talking on the rational use of remdesivir and oxygen in the COVID-19 management. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, it's visible, very much visible, Dr. Shashibhushan.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One second, I'm just.
Dr. Shashibhushan, make it full screen. I think
Yes, sir.
that
That's
will
what
be
I'm
better.
doing. That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to do. Before I start on the topics, I would like, this is the new guidelines, the state guidelines, how we have divided and categorized the COVID patients. It's been divided into A, B, C, E, F. Earlier we had mild, moderate, severe. So we have subdivided mild into A, B, C. A is patients who are asymptomatic with COVID-19 positive, and patients with mild symptoms who have anosmia, fever, dry cough, myalgia, diarrhea, loss of taste and smell. These two categories of patients will be in home isolations. Category C patients who are comorbidity with age is a high risk, age more than 60 years with comorbidities like obesity, diabetes, hypertension, IST, COPD with chronic lung disease, CKD, and immunocompromised host. These are the patients where we can keep them in the CCC or the DCHC. The next group of patients are D, E, F. D is again moderate, and severe. In moderate, we have D and E category. D consists of pneumonia without respiratory failure, whose saturation is more than 94%. They can be in the wards in a COVID hospital. They can be in the wards, and pneumonia with respiratory failure whose saturation is less than 94. They can be again in an HDU setup. So the last group of patients who are severe in respiratory failure, Let me talk about remdesivir first, then go to the oxygen rational use. Because remdesivir is medical management where we are going to start. Can you-
Mr. Gautam, ಎಲ್ಲಾರನ್ನು ಪರ್ಮನೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡ್ರಿ ಸ್ಪೀಕರ್.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah, I'm having a lot of disturbance. Please
Yes, sir,
mute.
yes.
Regarding remdesivir, what is remdesivir? Most of you have been using remdesivir for the last 1 year. Some theoretical part of remdesivir, it's an intravenous nucleotide protein adenosine analog, and this binds to viral RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, thereby inhibiting the viral replication through premature termination of RNA transcription. It has been demonstrated in vitro activity against severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. Earlier, it was used in other viral infections like Ebola, which was probably seen in somewhere around 2001 to 2004. So remdesivir is approved by FDA for the treatment of COVID-19 in hospitalized adult and pediatric aged more than 12 years, weighing more than 40 kgs. It has been approved by FDA for the treatment of COVID-19 infection, especially in patients who are hospitalized. So even from the FDA, the authorization given is for emergency use only, not as a routine treatment. So hospitalized pediatric patient weighing more than 3.2, less than 40 kgs, or can also be started on remdesivir unless there is a definite evidence. So this should be administered only in a hospital setting and not at a outpatient setting or at home. The DCJ has approved the use of remdesivir as a restricted emergency use. This was in 26/2020. It had approved 2 drugs, remdesivir and favipiravir, for the use in severe cases initially. Over a period of time, what we have learned is where it has to be used, in which situation we have learned, and I'm trying to tell you where it should be initiated. The timing, when you want to use remdesivir. Ideally, if you want to start remdesivir, it should be started within 7 days of onset of symptoms and not after that. This is very important. Here our judicious or rational use of remdesivir comes into play. Basically, the timing, the history taking is very important when a patient comes to you. The initiation of remdesivir, it should be within the 7 days. This chart also shows that the viral genome replication happens and it is at peak at 8th day. So earlier, within the first 7 to 8 days, with the patients with a history of fever and breathlessness, these are the patients where the initiation of remdesivir is ideal, not beyond this. So once the patient goes beyond this, he will fall into a cytokine storm-like picture. There is no role of remdesivir usage after 7 to 8 days. So timing and duration of symptom is very important when you want to initiate remdesivir. So what are the indications of remdesivir? Where you want to start? Remdesivir is initiated in a confirmed SARS-CoV-2 infection, basically whose saturation is less than 94% on room air, who requires a supplemental oxygen therapy. If you happen to get a radiograph done or a HRCT done, they should be a mnemonic-like picture, and a HRCT severity score of more than 15 is ideal. So basically, I was trying to tell you about the categorization CDE. C is a category where the patient is in DCHC with symptoms. Here, a patient with comorbidities whose saturation falls less than 94%. The role of steroids and low molecular will come into play along with remdesivir. The other criteria, again, I'm stressing here, patient with pneumonia without respiratory failure whose saturation is more than 94. This is an exception. This has to be dealt very seriously unless you have a HRCT done. CT score more than 15 with radiographic infiltrates of imaging suggestive of pneumonia. This is a criteria where we need to start remdesivir. We all know that pneumonia with respiratory failure is a definitive criteria to start remdesivir. So I'm stressing D and E. So we need to catch them early. Comorbidities whose saturation is less than 94, that is the timing, and duration should be less than 8 days. That is the timing to start remdesivir for a very efficacious role of antiviral activity of a remdesivir. So one thing what we have learned in the last 1 year is we are seeing a lot of patients with COVID-like syndrome. Patients with symptoms of SARI, but his RT-PCR is negative. But his features, his HRCT features, his blood report suggestive of COVID-like picture. So that is one more indication where we can start. But again, you need to be very careful. That is, it should be this HRCT, CT Coronavirus score of 4 or 5 with a saturation of level of less than 94% is an indication to start remdesivir. This guidelines again is approved by the state government. We have a very clear-cut treatment protocol when RT-PCR is negative, how to deal with. So this is from those guidelines we have taken up. And again, I'm telling that it is Coronavirus score 4 or 5. 4 is high, suspicious for COVID-19. 5 with a Coronavirus score of very high, typical of COVID-19. When RT-PCR is negative. This is one exception where we need to, because what is happening is everybody is starting remdesivir when a patient is asymptomatic, when the patient is having fever. So if I would like to say here is when the patient coming to you with fever, mild symptoms, what we have seen in the last 1 week, what we have learned in 1 week, favipiravir is playing a very good role. Within starting of favipiravir, the fever has subsided. The second wave, what we are noticing, symptoms in the second wave predominantly is fever, body ache, and loose stools. So that is what I would like to stress here. There is no role of remdesivir unless specifically all the findings are available. So favipiravir can be used in the initial days with fever, high fever with body ache. So that's one very important. You don't have to start remdesivir because most of the places, mild symptoms, they're starting remdesivir. So remdesivir has no role for mild asymptomatic. And history is very important. So what is the dosing? Once you know where to start or where to initiate remdesivir, as all of you have been using this, the dose is on day 1, injection remdesivir 200 milligram IV on day 1, followed by 100 milligram IV for the next 4 days. A total of 5 days duration is sufficient, and it needs to be diluted with 100 ml normal saline, administered as an IV infusion over 30 to 120 minutes, flushed line with at least 30 ml of normal saline after remdesivir infusion is complete. We should not administer simultaneously with any other medications or IV solutions other than normal saline. What are the contraindications for remdesivir? If the patient is known hypersensitive to remdesivir, it is contraindicated. And if there is a pre-existing hepatic dysfunction, ALT or AST more than 5 times the upper limit of normal, or elevation of ALT accompanied by signs or symptoms of liver inflammation, like there could be nausea, vomiting, increased conjugated bilirubin. These are the contraindication to not to start remdesivir. And if his eGFR is less than 30 ml per minute, it's a relative contraindication, because we have used in our setup a patient with 85 years who is a chronic kidney disease. We have given remdesivir following a dialysis. So patient has responded very well. So that is a thing where, again, it should be moderate disease. Early initiation is very important. within 7 days with a moderate disease whose saturation is less than 94. Once you give remdesivir, what are the monitoring adverse effects and drug reactions? So it can cause gastrointestinal symptoms, elevated transaminase levels, an increase in prothrombin time, and hypersensitivity reactions. So liver function and prothrombin time should be obtained in all patients before remdesivir administered and during the treatment as clinically indicated. Other things what we have to note about is the alaline, it should be discontinued if the alaline transaminase level is more than 5 times the upper limit. An increase in ALT levels and signs and symptoms of liver inflammation are observed, need to be discontinued. Following infusion at the time of giving remdesivir, if the patient develops diaphoresis, hypotension, nausea, shivering, vomiting, you need to observe and temporarily stop this. Discontinue administration and institute appropriate treatment if clinically significant infusion reaction occurs. It is not recommended in patient with eGFR less than 30 ml per minute, and renal function should be monitored in patient before and after remdesivir.
Dr. Shashibhushan,
Yeah.
your volume is very low. Please kindly increase your volume and then speak.
Okay, sir. Okay. Now, sir. Hello.
Yeah, better.
Okay, sir. Okay. In the early days of COVID, we were using chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. What we found out over a period of time that this may decrease the antiviral activity of remdesivir. So co-administration of these drugs is not recommended. Now coming to pregnancy and children. Again, pregnancy patients were excluded from the clinical trial that evaluated the safety and efficacy of remdesivir for the treatment of COVID-19. But preliminary reports showed that usage in pregnancy in a compassionate grounds, they found out that especially in severe COVID who received remdesivir, they were well tolerated with a low serious adverse effects. So basically it is not indicated, but if a situation arises, especially again in a moderate setting, can be tried on a consent basis. You need to take a consent before you saying that there is no role. Usually we in our setup also, we are not used patients who are pregnant with remdesivir. Again, in children, the safety and efficacy of remdesivir for the treatment in COVID-19 has not been evaluated, especially children less than 12 years or whose weight is less than 40 kgs. So again, FDA as approved is available through FDA for the treatment whose patients who are hospitalized whose weight is 3.5 to less than 40 kgs or less than 12 years of age. So ideal, the dosage what has been suggested is 5 milligram per kg weight on day 1 followed by 2.5 milligram per kg on the next 4 days. Coming to some trials where they found out that what is the efficacy of the remdesivir. ACTT trial is adaptive COVID-19 trial. It was a multinational placebo-controlled double-blind RCT. Again, what they found out in this trial was there was no statistically significant decrease in mortality, and the median time to recovery between the two arms who had mild to moderate disease did not show much improvement. So what the positive point in this trial was the benefit was seen in patient who required supplemental oxygen. So this is one very important. And the timing, again, this study mentioned about the timing. Early initiation is the most ideal, that is within 7 days, and who are hypoxemic less than 94%, there was some benefit in that. in study. Coming to the next solidarity trial. This again, it's a repurposed antiviral drugs by the WHO, initiated by the WHO. Here again, it was a 4-arm group where remdesivir, hydroxychloroquine, lopinavir, and interferon, and a standard care of therapy was initiated. 5-group trial, and here again they showed that it had no benefit or little effect in a patient in reducing the mortality and patient on a ventilator during the hospital stay. Again, this is the same thing about the solidarity. The arms in the multiple arms, and what are the criteria, basically inclusion, exclusion, and the intervention, what was noted here. Again, it showed that it did not decrease in-hospital mortality in hospitalized patient when compared to local standard of care therapy. So this is a WHO trial which says that there is no role of remdesivir here, especially in a moderate to severe. That's what they're saying here. Coming to the next most important thing, because there are a lot of hospitals using remdesivir for 10 days. So this study basically from the NEGM, which showed that the efficacy of remdesivir for 5 days or 10 days in patients with severe COVID. So what they found out, this did not show significant difference between a 5-day or a 10-day course of remdesivir. So later on, what we started using, the government of India also initiated to use remdesivir for 5 days rather than a 10-day duration. So a lot of studies proved that longer treatment with 10 days course usually did not show any improvement, clinical improvement. So a 5-day course is sufficient rather than a 10-day course. So we have stopped using remdesivir in a severe COVID patients. Again, differences of remdesivir in a hospitalized patients. Again, this is a multinational randomized open label trial where they found out the day 4 distribution in a clinical status of the ordinal scale. How benefit was this? Again, the interpretation in this study was there was in severe COVID patient, again remdesivir did not have any beneficial effect. The WHO, which released a booklet on therapeutics and COVID on March 31st, 2021, 15 days back, 20 days back, which tells that WHO recommends against the use of remdesivir in hospitalized patient in addition to standard cares, regardless of the disease severity. This is a statement given by the WHO. Here they mention the definitive treatment for COVID is steroid and low molecular weight heparin. But again, what we have seen is early initiation within 7 days in a moderate case whose saturation is less than 94, the usage of remdesivir is indicated. There are multiple summary of trials. Again, the ACCT, Solidarity, these are again trials regarding the 4 trials which says that what is the outcome of these trials. So again, each trial says that basically when a patient on a mechanical ventilation, it definitely will not help. Patient usage of remdesivir is not going to help when the patient on a mechanical ventilation. So again, I'm stressing the timing within 7 to 8 days. Hypoxemia is the patient in moderate COVID is the ideal situation to start remdesivir. In the UK and Europe, remdesivir has been conditionally approved in adolescents more than 12 years of age and adults. Then again, they also say the same thing. Patients with pneumonia who require supplemental oxygen or a non-invasive ventilation is the ideal time to start remdesivir. In the US, it has been approved again for adolescents more than 12 years who require hospitalization and as an emergency use authorization in children has been suggested by the US. The UK National Institute for Health and Care Excellence recommends remdesivir in adults and children more than 12 years of age who are in the hospital on supplemental oxygen, but not on an invasive mechanical ventilation. So once the patient is initiated, the complete 5-day course of treatment of remdesivir has been started, and when the patient has gone to subsequent progression to mechanical ventilation, there is no need of continuation. Even the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare says that unnecessary irrational use of remdesivir is unethical. So it's an experimental investigational drug granted for emergency authorization use only. It is not a life-saving drug in COVID. Studies do not demonstrate mortality reduction with this drug. It should be administered only in hospital setting. It is advised for people who are moderately sick and receiving oxygen, and never be administered in home setting. The Government of India guidelines also says very clearly it's an experimental drug. So definitive treatment as of now, in last 1 year, what we know is the initiation of steroid when there is hypoxia, not again steroid for all patients. Not all COVID positive patients should get steroid. Steroid is a definitive treatment when there is hypoxia, saturation less than 94%. So ideally, and D-dimer values more than 1000. So low molecular and steroids are the treatment of choice what we have at the present day. It is not remdesivir. So usage of remdesivir again in a moderate condition only. I'm stressing this again and again. Next, coming to use of oxygen therapy. What we have seen from the first wave compared to the second wave. So there is in the first wave, we had seen how the patients, who are the patients who got admitted, what age group got admitted. So there is from the first wave to second wave. So second wave, what we are seeing is there is a marginally higher proportion of patients in the younger age group. That is 0 to 19 years of age group. Last year it was 4.2. This year it is 5.8% of the 0 to 19 years of age group are there in with COVID. Among the 20 to 40 years of age group, there is a slight increase. Last year it is 23.7. This year it is 25.5%. This statement is from the National Registry. What I am quoting is from the Government of India National Registry, which was released very recently. It also shows that what we are seeing in the second wave is higher proportion of asymptomatic individuals are getting admitted. Again, this is not required. Asymptomatic, mild symptomatic should be treated at home isolation. So the more the patients are at home, which should be monitored, only the severe critically ill patient will come to the hospital where a quality care treatment is being given. So we can do a lot of justice to these patients. So here what we are seeing is everybody is trying to get admitted in the present wave. And higher, one more thing what we are seeing is higher proportion of patients admitted are presenting with breathlessness. And there is a requirement of supplemental oxygen. Oxygen is what one we are seeing is. And there is no difference in the percentage of death from the first wave to the second wave. And this trend is seen in all states in the country. So what we have to do, asymptomatic or a mild illness can be managed at home, and those do not require hospitalization. It's only the moderately ill patient, if managed as per the guideline, can be discharged early, and our oxygen supply for care needs to be ramped up. For that, what we need to do, how we can do that. In view of the ongoing second wave of COVID-19 pandemic, what has happened is there is sudden unprecedented demand for the oxygen as a therapy to treat COVID-19. If there is no proper monitoring, unwanted excess irrational use of oxygen therapy happens. So this needs to be avoided. So for that, we need to know what is the target saturation with the lowest FiO2 available for any patient. It is a patient with COVID, we need to aim our target saturation between 94 to 96%. So we should not expect 100% oxygen. 95, 96 is ideal. So what is happening is everybody trying to see that saturation to keep at 100%, try to give more oxygen. So that will be more dangerous. A patient with a pre-existing lung disease, whether it is a COPD or a interstitial lung disease or a chronic lung disease, the target saturation should be 88 to 92%. And patient on a mechanical ventilation, the target should be 90 to 95%. Everybody should know that the target population should not be 100%. It is around 95, 96 is ideal. So once you know what is the target, what are the oxygen delivery devices with a nasal cannula. So how much, if you are giving 1 liter of oxygen, the FiO2 from the atmosphere, basically atmosphere contains about 21.9. So the FiO2 is about 24%. So 2 liter, it is 28%. The maximum you can give in a nasal cannula is about 5 liters only. Ideally, 5 to 6, 5 would be ideal with a FiO2 of 40%. When you're using an oxygen mask, so when you want to start the oxygen with an oxygen mask, you have to begin with 5 liters of oxygen. I'll tell you why 5 liters, then keep increasing to 6 to 7. Maximum with an oxygen mask is about 8 liters you can give with a FiO2 of 60%. Then when you want to give oxygen through a Venturi mask, I'm showing what Venturi mask on the right side of the picture. Again, Venturi mask, you're giving 3 liters, FiO2 about 24%. Here you can give up to 15 liters with the FiO2 of 50%. So the next, this is stepwise. I'm trying to tell you each step where you keep increasing the oxygen. Here, the next is a mask with a reservoir bag. This is a partial rebreather. This is one very effective, what we have seen in COVID times. Using of a rebreathing mask is very effective. Here, maximum oxygen given is 12 liters. So FiO2 you can reach up to 90%. And a non-rebreathing mask, again, is about 15 liters. FiO2 up to 100% you can anticipate. So what are the algorithm for initiation of oxygen? So when a patient comes to with COVID-19 proven or a suspect, you with a hypoxia, say his saturation is less than 94%, you initiate oxygen via nasal prong, about 2 to 5 liters, or a face mask about 5 liters. If his saturation increases to, if SpO2 increases to more than 94% with a FiO2 of 40%, continue to treat him with oxygen in the ward. If he's unable to achieve SpO2 of more than 94%, then you start him on a non-rebreathing mask. If he's still not maintaining, then start him on a trial of HFNC or a NIV trial. If he still continues to not to improve, there is signs of fatigue, worsening deoxygenation, rising PCO2, SpO2 falling down to less than 80, respiratory rate is more than 30, heart rate of more than 120, then this is the ideal time for him to get intubated. And once he's intubated, follow the ARDS protocol. Again, your target saturation on a patient with a ventilator is 90 to 92%. The patient at admission is more than 94%. Oxygen therapy is not required. Monitor is vital. Continue regular COVID treatment as per the protocol. One more thing, what I would like to mention here regarding the mask. The minimum oxygen flow rate required using oxygen face mask is 5 liters. If it is less, what happens? When you're giving less oxygen, say 3 liters or 2 liters, the FiO2 delivery will be insufficient and carbon dioxide reduction happens. So 5 liter and above is must to ensure the washout of exhaled gas and carbon dioxide retention. So once he is oxygen, how do you want to titrate? Titrate of oxygen, either increase or reduce to maintain the target oxygen saturation. This flow chart, what you're seeing on the right side, shows available option for stepping up or stepping down in the wards. And you need to allow at least 5 minutes at each dose before adjusting for further upward or downward, except with the major and sudden fall in saturation. If a fall in saturation of more than 3% should require a clinical review, so that you need to shift him to an HDU or ICU. Once the patient has adequate and stable saturation on a minimal oxygen dose, consider discontinuation of oxygen. So what here I'm trying to tell in the right side of the slide is, you start initiation of say 2 liters through a nasal cannula. After 5 minutes, if there is no improvement, increase to 4 liters. Again after 5 minutes, 6 liters. Still no improvement, then shift him to a simple face mask of 5 to 6 liters. After 5 minutes, there is no improvement, increase the dose, increase the oxygen to 7 to 8. Even then, there is no improvement, a non-rebreathing mask of 15 liters to be started off. Once patient is on oxygen, you need to taper it or wean the oxygen therapy. If the patient is, say, he's already on a NIV or a BiPAP, your target saturation is 94, he has achieved that, then you try to shift him from a high flow nasal cannula with an intermittent NIV. Again, target is 94 to 96 with a 2 hours of on and off of oxygen with HFNC and intermittent. If he's maintaining that target, then shift him to NRBM and high flow nasal cannula. So 2 hours of NRBM and 2 hours of HFNC should be tried. If he still maintains with that, then come back to face mask or NRBM. If he's still managing or continues to have a saturation of 94 or 95, shift him to nasal prongs. If he's on nasal prongs maintaining, so you can discontinue the use of oxygen. It's a stepwise manner. Every 5 minutes, depending upon the clinical situation, you need to assess, and ABG is required on and off to assess the status of the condition. These are some devices. You can see the nasal cannula, face mask, rebreathing mask, the high flow nasal cannula, NIV, and patient on a ventilator. Now coming to regarding the what if you give excess of oxygen, say you're targeting above 96. So what are the dangers you should know when you give excess oxygen? Pulmonary oxygen toxicity. What happens when you give more? So basically why this oxygen toxicity happens because of the release of free radicals, and it is generated due to excess oxygen and can damage the lung tissue. The usually cellular antioxidants protect the lungs. Usually tissue damage occurs in 2 phases, that is exudative phase and a proliferative phase. Recovery from oxygen injury is characterized by interstitial scarring and fairly normal appearing capillary endothelium and alveolar epithelium. So this is what we should know. The post-COVID fibrosis, whatever we are seeing, is probably it could be one of the effects of increased oxygen or hypoxia. There are some studies which shows this study taken from this article, where it shows that hyperoxia of every 1% increase in SpO2 increases the chance of fibrosis. So it can lead to trachobronchitis, ARDS, or a pulmonary interstitial fibrosis. So that's one thing what we need to know about this. So what are the clinical manifestation of pulmonary oxygen toxicity? Clinical oxygen toxicity is manifested in several ways. In a normal subject, they can experience a decrease in vital capacity and a fall in diffusion lung capacity. The lung components gets diminished. There could be tracheobronchitis, which they present with substernal chest pain, is one thing what following COVID, what we are seeing is these excess oxygen can worsen sepsis or can induce a MODS, multi-organ dysfunction syndrome also. So what we need to know is most clinical relevant concerns are over-auction toxicity. So that's around what we need to know about is the absorption atelectasis, hypercamping respiratory failure in at-risk individuals, like especially in a COPD patients, and acute respiratory distress syndrome, hyaline membrane disease leading to bronchopulmonary dysplasia, especially in the newborn. Again, I would like, what message I would like to give here is, we need to have some innovative idea to reduce the pandemic. The present pandemic should be converted to an epidemic, then to an endemic. I think so. Some new ideas should come. So it's not the vaccines only. Along with vaccine, you should initiate that everybody should continue usage of vaccine and follow appropriate COVID behavior. Probably if there is a break in chain and judicious use of these medication, there will be some effort to reduce the pandemic. Thank you. Any questions?
Dr. Shashibhushan, before everybody organize themselves, there is a demand for keeping oxygen cylinders at home. Particularly, I have got some queries from Delhi that they want to buy and keep oxygen cylinders at home. So what is your advice?
Sir, early symptoms, they should consult a hospital. It is not advisable to keep cylinders at home, sir, especially if the patient is a chronic lung disease who's already on oxygen. There is no need of keeping oxygen at home. A precautionary keeping oxygen would never help. So with symptoms, immediately they should go to the hospital.
Yeah. One more question is, this remdesivir is there in the AIMS protocol that is released this month.
Yes.
So I think you see WHO is a recommendatory body. I'm telling from my working in WHO as a rabies expert. So we give recommendations from WHO that is global, but it is not binding on the national governments. It is the national governments which will discuss internally and give the technical recommendation. So either it is a Government of India recommendation, or it may be in some way, it may be a AIMS New Delhi recommendation. Of course, if GOI recommendation is not available, AIMS New Delhi can be taken as a reference. So remdesivir is there. For those who are in ward, definitely remdesivir is not for home isolation, not for those in ICU. It is there for those who are in the ward. I have seen the recent AIMS recommendation. So can you just give your personal comment about rational use of remdesivir in the context of AIMS recommendation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because again, a lot of studies, whatever I shared some trials. This is a cautious way of putting. I got WHO into the picture for a cautious use, so that it will be used rationally. There is definitely a beneficial effect of remdesivir when you start using at the appropriate time. So the appropriate time, again, I'm stressing, is 7th day or 8th day of symptoms, and saturation less than 94%. We have seen, we ourselves have seen, it is very effective. Definitely remdesivir has a role when initiated at the right time. Because what is happening is, once the patient is diagnosed to have COVID positive, remdesivir is started. For that reason, I'm trying to put certain things in a systematic way, sir. Keeping WHO, what has happened, I'm trying to get trials here to show. So why AIMS also says again is in moderate condition. So again, our criteria for moderate is a hospitalized patient with respiratory failure whose saturation is less than 94%.
Right.
So that's the criteria.
Thank you.
Shashi, there's a question. Dr. Shashi, there's a question which says,
Sir.
can we use both favipiravir and remdesivir together?
Not together, sir, not together. See, that's the reason, again, I put a point of favipiravir where it has to be used. This is something what we have learned in the last 1 week, where we are seeing fever is a predominant symptom in the second wave. Fever, body ache, and diarrhea. Fever not responsive to any antipyretics. So we have seen initiation of favipiravir has responded. Patient has within few hours his fever has come down. So we can wait, sir. Cannot be used simultaneously or together. Start with favipiravir. Keep a watch on his saturation, temperature. It still is not okay. Then, if only if the saturation comes down, the role of remdesivir will come here, sir.
There's one more question which asks, can steroids be started as soon as hypoxia sets in, even if we don't have the inflammatory marker values?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As per the recovery trial, it clearly mentions that hypoxia is indication for steroid. You can start. That is where we need to start.
Okay. Any other questions, please? Anybody else?
Gautam, there are many questions in the chat box. Dr. Dayanand.
Yes, sir. I'll ask.
Yeah, many questions.
Gautam.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Chat box ಅಲ್ಲಿ questions ಇದೆ.
Questions ಇದೆ.
ಅದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಓದ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಆಯ್ತು ತಾಳಿ. ನಾನೇ ಒಂದ್ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಓದ್ತೀನಿ. I think this program should benefit.
Many of them are about volumes, too low volume ಅಂತ ತುಂಬಾ ಜನ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
ಅದು ಸರ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಸರ್, ಬಟ್ ಅವ್ರದ್ದೇನಾದ್ರು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದೇನೋ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲಿ.
Many of them are asking for PPT presentation, whatever PPT are there. But I think we are recording it and putting it on YouTube, so it will be there permanently.
Sir, one more question, Dr. Shashibhushan. There is one question which says, what is the role of ecosprin and NOAC?
No, that is in context of I didn't get in on context.
ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರೋ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಪ್ರೀತಿರಾಜ್ ಬಳ್ಳಾನ್. He has put in a chat box. Just
maybe, sir, I will answer. Probably when the D-dimer values are more, if the patient is already on ecosprin. So as an anticoagulant, patient is a ISD patient. So we need to give both simultaneously. Probably that is where the usage of this will help.
There is one more question. In case of high-risk patients, can we wait till they desaturate?
No, sir, no.
Okay, next. Severe COVID pneumonia with repeated RT-PCR positive on ECMO. Is there any role for continuing extended duration?
No, I have explained there is no
benefit. Okay, for the benefit of everybody.
Yes.
CKD patients on HD with
Yes,
severe COVID pneumonia. What is your comment on continuing full dose of remdesivir?
Not in severe COVID. See, we don't suggest in severe COVID. We are giving it moderate COVID. Can be given. Full dose can be given following dialysis.
Okay. Are doxy and ivermectin alternative to favipiravir?
Doxycycline is no more there in the guidelines. It is not an alternative. It is not an alternative.
Okay. What is the role of 6 minutes walk test? Is
Very
it
important.
a reliable marker to predict impending hypoxia and underlying inflammation?
Very important. Not the underlying information. What we can see is the disease severity can be assessed so that the patient maybe in a few hours can deteriorate. So if the saturation after a 6-minute walk test in patients aged more than 60 years, there is a fall in saturation of less than 4%. That is an indication for them to go to the hospital, get admitted or get evaluated. Patients who are more than 60, it is 3-minute walk test.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Next is indication of tocilizumab.
Again in severe.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Next is role of calcium gluconate.
No, there is no specific role actually calcium gluconate unless there is hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, something like that, not on a routine basis.
Then there is one. Can prophylactic dose of enoxaparin be given to hospitalized patients without D-dimer level?
Not advisable.
Okay, next rapid fire questions like that. Let me, for the benefit of everybody, I am reading. Then I think most of it has been covered. For normal vital patients with COVID positive, is that necessary of remdesivir? I think you have answered.
No,
Okay. And then there is one more. Starting oral anticoagulants from day one.
no, sir, no. Unless we have some
Yeah.
evidence, blood
Yeah.
reports, no.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. However, I think almost all covered. Yeah. Over. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Over to Dr. Rupashri.
Thank you so much, sir. Very good afternoon to one and all. I'm glad to have given an opportunity to be a part of this program. So, RGHS online training and education for COVID-19 awareness. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to our Honorable VC sir, Dr. C.S. Sachidananda, for his vision, constant support for this execution of online training, which is a part of in view of second wave of COVID-19 in Karnataka. So I thank Dr. Shashibhushan sir for his excellent, clear, precise, elaborate information which is provided, which is very evident by the comments what we got. Your slides are in very high demand, sir, because they find it very useful. And many of them have expressed because of their ongoing COVID duty, they could not attend the session. So they are very much in need of your slide, which shows that your presentation is so much helpful and which is need of the hour in this situation. And on behalf of RGHS and VC sir, Registrar sir, I express my sincere thanks for accepting our invitation.
You are unmuted, ma'am. Please.
Madam, you are muted. Rupashri, madam. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah. Please go on.
Okay, and I thank our registrar, sir, Dr. Ramakrishna Reddy, sir, for his constant support. And I'm thankful to Dr. Sudarshan, sir, who is the chairman of task force for COVID-19, Government of Karnataka, for his timely guidance and support. And I am told that mission director has also joined this meeting. Thank you so much. And I thank all the Dr. B.J. Mahindra sir and Dr. Dayanand sir for being the driving force to kickstart this program. And I also thank all the members of the committee, and thanks to Mr. Gautam Eco India for providing the technical support. Thanks to all the dean, director, principals of medical colleges and private colleges, pharmacy, nursing, and institutions affiliated to Rajiv Gandhi universities. I could see many of them have arranged for group viewing in many of the colleges, which is thank you so much. And I thank Director, Health and Family Welfare, and Deputy Directors of all the divisions of Health and Family Welfare for disseminating this information to all the faculty and staff. And I thank DHO of all the districts, President, IMA Karnataka branch, and all the participants for their time, and hope this information will be useful to you. And as one more reminder, this program will be continuously hosted every Tuesday and Fridays at 11 o'clock. Links will be provided. Please keep checking RGHS website and your mail IDs. Do log in for all the information which will be given to you by the experts in the state of Karnataka. Thank you one and all. Thank you so much.
I have to thank Mr. Gautam.
Yes, sir. I thank, sir. Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
once
you one
again,
and all
Shashi
who
Bhushan.
have directly and indirectly helped all of us to start this, and I mean, want this continuous support in all other programs also. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you one and all. Dr. Shashi, thank you once again for your wonderful presentation. It's been appreciated by one and all. Thank you.
And so one more, we have more than 500 participants, individual participants, and hundreds of group weaving will be presenting the data to you. Thank you so much, sir.
Dr. Shashibhushan, it was a wonderful talk. I think your slides and your presentation in YouTube will be of great demand. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations to you, sir. And as per Honorable VC Sir's advice, we are planning to bring out the compendium of all your presentations. So kindly share your presentation with us, which will be of great help to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Okay, sir, we are logging off. Thank you. Have a good day.